Imagine this. You are a blue-collar worker who found an affordable neighborhood with all these beautiful newly built homes, a newly built school for you to settle down and raise your family. Okay, pause. Let's fast forward now. So it's been some time, you're all moved in, your kids have started school, and you're settled now. Yay, happy family vibes. But turns out that you've been noticing these weird substances emerging in your backyard. And your kids say that they've seen these weird substances in their school playground too. And what's with these weird odors all the time? What the heck, right? So you talk to your neighbors and you decide to go and complain to the city council. The city council conducts an investigation and turns out that your neighborhood was built right on top of a toxic chemical waste dump. You and your neighbors had no idea about this when you first bought your house. At least now you know why it was so cheap when you first bought it. Because of the toxic chemical waste dump near your house, toxic chemicals have been seeping into your vegetable gardens, infiltrating your groundwater, and polluting your air. Okay, this is too much. You want to get out of here now. You want your money back. You don't want your kids to be growing up in these unsafe conditions. So you and your neighbors decide to go and protest to the state government. But they're not doing too much about this. In the coming years, you learn that the people, especially the women who have been growing up, who have been living in their community and growing up there, have developed reproductive problems. The babies who have been born have birth defects. The kids growing up in the surrounding areas have developed asthma, and there's a very high concentration of cancer in your community. What the heck? This story went from 0 to 100 real quick, huh? I was just talking to you about you and your happy family moving into your nice little home and starting a new school and settling down. And now we're at birth defects and lung cancer? What? Well, this was the reality for the residents of the Love Canal neighborhood in New York during the mid-20th century. It is no coincidence that this specific lower-income working-class community had to deal with the health consequences that came with living near that toxic chemical waste dump. In fact, when many companies are deciding where to locate their hazardous waste facility or their landfill, it is often low-income communities and communities of color that are disproportionately targeted. And you're probably like, hold up, Shivani, Love Canal was 50-some years ago. This is a whole nother era. Things have changed since then. And you know what? That's exactly what I thought when I first learned about Love Canal in my history class when I was in high school. Elcon is a toxic waste facility that came along in our community, which was a big environmental disruption. I am from Falls Township, Pennsylvania, which is a relatively lower income part of Bucks County as a whole. Falls Township and the surrounding areas, such as Tullytown and Bristol Township, have a very high concentration of industrial sites, landfills, chemical waste plants, and freeways. Due to the smog buildup of all of these harmful polluters, many people in the surrounding areas suffer significantly from lung-related diseases such as lung cancer, asthma, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And if all of this wasn't enough, my community was and still is battling another environmental injustice of its own. About 5 years ago, a company called Elcon proposed building a toxic waste treatment facility about 5 minutes away from the Delaware River. If this facility got approved, then the air pollution from it could amplify the risks of the already existing lung-related diseases that the residents of my community suffer from. And if there was to be an accident, it could jeopardize the drinking water of nearly 16 million people. I don't know if you guys heard me correctly. I just said 16 million people. That's a lot of people's drinking water that could be affected. For the past 5 years, activists in my community have been pushing against the approval of Elcon, and me too, more so in the past year. The Department of Environmental Protection has rejected Elcon's application multiple times throughout the past 5 years, but Elcon continues to resend their application back. Currently, we are still waiting to hear back from the DEP's decision. The location that Elcon chose for its site is no coincidence. Sound familiar? Remember Love Canal? Why did this company decide to locate its first facility in my lower-income, working-class suburb? I mean, something like a toxic waste facility would never be proposed in the land of my neighboring wealthier communities like Doylestown or Newtown. This is an example of environmental injustices occurring today. Americans across the country, especially lower-income Americans and communities of color, are suffering from the health consequences that come with living near harmful polluters such as these. And when industries are deciding where to locate their facility, it is often lower-income communities and communities of color that are disproportionately targeted. Think about it. You may have heard of some of these names in the news lately. Number 1, Flint, Michigan. The fact that the lead water contamination of their drinking water has not been resolved since the year 2014 is not a coincidence. Flint is a predominantly black community, and to be 50% to be exact, and it has a very high concentration of lower-income Americans. The fact that their issue has not been resolved is not a coincidence. As of January 2019, there are still doubts about the safety of Flint's drinking water. That's been 5 years, and we're going on 6, you guys. 2014 till now. These residents have been dealing with contaminated drinking water. The same thing with Newark, New Jersey. About 50% of Newark's population is African American, and 36% is Hispanic or Latino. Why hasn't the lead water crisis in New Jersey's biggest city been resolved yet? Another one. The indigenous population of Navajo Nation have been dealing with contaminated drinking water due to the industrial uranium mining occurring around them. Why hasn't their water been fixed yet? It's been years now. They've protested, they've complained, and it's still like this. The United States of America is considered a first world country, yet there are entire communities out there that don't have access to clean drinking water. This is not a 50 years ago type of an issue. We have a community on one side in which the air they breathe and the water they drink has no adverse effect on the water, on their health. And that's exactly how it should be. But here we have another community on this side, just a couple miles down the road from this one, in which the children are playing in playgrounds that have arsenic in the soil and people are drinking tap water that contains lead. This is not an issue that should be overlooked. This is about people's lives. And Americans across the country are suffering from the health consequences due to living near these harmful polluters. Although there's nothing in the United States Constitution that flat out says, okay, here you have the right to clean air, here you have the right to clean air, water, and equal environmental protection. Luckily, there are many states beginning to adopt this type of rights within their own state constitutions. In the state of Pennsylvania, you have that right. You have the right to clean water, you have the right to equal environmental protection, you have the right to clean air. This is exactly what my community used in our fight against Elcon. And you might be thinking right now, okay, Shivani, you just spouted out all this information. What now? Huh? What are you going to do about it? Well, if I had a magic wand, I would probably abracadabra the heck out of all the environmental injustices happening in the entire world. If I had a magic wand, I'd make sure that every community would be breathing clean air, every community would be drinking clean water, and no community would have to suffer from the health consequences that came with their surrounding environment. But, does anyone see a magic wand on me? No. Unfortunately, I don't have a magic wand. But both people from affected communities and unaffected communities can still come together to stand up for the equal environmental protection of all communities. And I know this sounds very cliche because this is often the solution for everything, right? It's cliche, but it's so important to be aware of what is going on around you. So keep up with the news and go to your local town hall meetings and speak out during public comment if you don't like what you're seeing. This also sounds really cliche, but it's all about the voting process. Elect leaders who will be representing your equal protection, environmental protection. Another thing, college students. You guys are probably on the search for apartments, or you may be living in an apartment right now, or you're thinking about searching for one. Work with your landlords to make sure that you don't have toxic lead paint on the walls of your building. Make sure that future tenants don't have to deal with bad water quality. Make sure you guys work with creating good water filtration systems in your apartments. Another thing, homeowners. I'm sure your pets or your families or your children, they're out there in your backyard, having a barbecue or rolling around, whatever kids do nowadays. But it's one thing you guys can do is go out to your local Home Depot or purchase a soil toxicity kit online and check your soil. Check the quality of your soil. Report back to your local town hall. When it comes to trying to protect the rights of other people, when it comes to environmental justice, it is not an issue that's going to be fixed like this. There's so much you can do, but it's not going to be fixed like this. It's an ongoing resistance. So let's work together to make sure that communities like Love Canal, or Flint, Michigan, or Falls Township, Pennsylvania, don't have to deal with the health consequences that come with living near harmful facilities. Let's work together to make sure that the America of our future receives the environmental justice it so deserves. Thank you for your time. Also, I've always wanted to say this. Thank you for coming to the